If you've ever bought a house, you know there's something sacred about that moment when you hold the keys for the first time. You unlock more than just a door. You unlock years of dreams, long nights of saving, difficult choices, and the promise of a new chapter. That's exactly how it felt the day Eliza and I moved into our first real home. We weren't rich. We weren't flashy. But we had worked our tails off for this little slice of South Carolina, and we intended to protect it like it was part of our soul. I'm Daniel, by the way. People used to call me Doc when I was in the Navy, not because I was a doctor, but because I always carried a first aid kit in my rucksack, and I knew how to handle blood better than most. I did my time, 7 years active duty, 3 of them overseas, 2 in cold gray ships, and the last few behind a desk. When I got out, I promised myself I'd build something stable, something quiet. I wanted roots. I wanted peace. And I wanted to never, ever be ordered around again. That's probably why what happened next hit so hard. Eliza and I met in college, right before I re-enlisted. She was smart, funny, calm in chaos, which made us a perfect match because I was chaos. She taught me the kind of patience that no drill instructor ever could. She also taught me how to love a life that wasn't constantly moving. When she got a teaching job in Charleston, we started putting money away bit by bit until by some miracle and with the help of a good VA loan, we finally bought a home of our own. The house was small, no doubt about it. 2 bedrooms, a wide porch, a slanted roof with aging shingles, and a detached garage that leaned a little too far to the right when it rained. But to us, it was heaven. It sat on a quiet street just outside the city limits. No loud neighbors, no traffic, and just enough space between properties to feel like you had your own world. The backyard had an old oak tree that Eliza immediately named Milo, and the driveway. Oh, that driveway. It curved inward like a question mark, made of pale gravel and edged by overgrown grass. Long enough to park 2 cars comfortably and maybe squeeze a third if you were creative. It sloped ever so slightly upward, which made it great for rain runoff, and even better for Moose, our Labrador, to run laps like he was training for a canine Olympics. That driveway became one of our favorite features. Eliza would say, "It's where we come home," and she meant it. That spot represented everything we were trying to build, a life free from command, chaos, and drama. Well, of course, that wouldn't last. In those first few months, we settled into a rhythm. Eliza woke early, packed her lunch, and left for the elementary school by 7:15. I'd make coffee, walk Moose, and log into my remote IT job from the dining room, where the Wi-Fi barely reached, but the view of the oak tree made it worth the buffering. I'd patch networks, troubleshoot systems, explain to panicked clients how their lost files weren't really lost. Then I'd close my laptop and tend the yard or repair something small. An old fence, a flickering porch light, the mysterious creaking under the stairs. Weekends were for trips to the farmer's market, long drives to nowhere, or home projects like planting herbs in repurposed paint cans. We had no kids yet, but we talked about them. About what color we'd paint the nursery, about Moose being a good big brother, about making pancakes on Saturday mornings as a family. Life was slow, soft, and easy. The kind of easy you almost don't trust. We didn't know much about the neighbors at first. Most houses on the street were separated by old trees, some wrapped in vines that had grown wild. The property next door, in particular, had been vacant since we moved in. The grass was overgrown, the mailbox leaned like it had given up, and there was a strange quiet to the place, like it had been waiting for someone, but they never showed. According to the real estate agent, the house had belonged to an elderly couple who'd passed away within months of each other, and their adult kids had been trying to sell it for nearly a year. For a while, we liked it that way. The silence, the privacy. I'd sit on the porch some evenings, drink in hand, listening to the frogs and watching the sun fade through the trees. Moose would lie at my feet, snoring. Eliza would sit next to me, sometimes grading papers, sometimes just being. We had neighbors in the technical sense, but no one close enough to overhear our arguments or see us dancing badly in the kitchen. There was an older man down the road, named Jerry, who walked every morning at exactly 6 a.m. He wore white sneakers, khakis, and a fishing hat, no matter the weather. He always waved. Sometimes we chatted. "Y'all got lucky with that house," he'd say. Previous folks kept to themselves. Real decent. But this street? You gotta watch who moves in next. Lot of strange people out there. I laughed it off. We felt safe. Too safe, maybe. Then came the first signs of change. One Saturday in late spring, we were pulling weeds near the driveway when we heard it. A low rumble followed by the sharpest of brakes. A massive U-Haul turned the corner and rolled slowly into the driveway next door. Eliza stood up first. I followed her gaze. Out stepped a woman. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Shoulder-length blonde hair pulled back so tightly I winced. Bright pink athletic pants, matching fleece jacket, and a pair of enormous black sunglasses that seemed surgically attached to her face. She stood by the truck for a full minute, surveying the house like a general planning a siege. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just nodded to herself, reached into the cab, and pulled out a clipboard. "Oh boy," I said under my breath. We watched for a while, half curious, half uneasy. Movers began unloading boxes, carrying them inside while she barked directions. "That's fragile. Don't drop it like you did in Georgia," she snapped at one of them, and the poor kid visibly flinched. She micromanaged every box like it held national secrets. Later that afternoon, I nudged Eliza. "Let's bring her something. First day neighbor stuff, you know." Eliza nodded. "Cookies or banana bread?" "Go with the banana bread. It's less risky." So she baked, and the smell of warm cinnamon and toasted walnut filled our home. Eliza wrapped it in foil, added a handwritten note that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood, Daniel and Eliza," and walked it next door. I watched from the window like a nervous dad sending his kid to the first day of school. She returned 5 minutes later, empty-handed. "What happened?" She said thanks, but told me not to walk across her grass again. "The grass that's up to her knees?" She said it's a work in progress. That was the moment the first domino fell. We didn't know it yet, but Marlene, soon to be known in our lives as Karen, was not just a new neighbor. She was a ticking time bomb of entitlement and misplaced authority. And she was about to turn our dream home into the front line of the most absurd property war we'd ever imagined. In the days following her move-in, we tried to give Karen, yes, at this point she had officially become Karen, in our private conversations, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just tired from a move. Maybe she'd settled down after unpacking. We even thought about inviting her for coffee, maybe a Saturday morning porch chat. That was until the first note showed up. It was taped to our mailbox like some sort of amateur legal document. Printed on plain paper, bolded Arial font, single-spaced, and signed at the bottom with Marlene B., as if she were handing down a royal decree. "Dear neighbor, please be advised that your trash bins were left out 14 hours after scheduled pickup. This is a violation of HOA policy and creates an unsightly atmosphere for surrounding homes. Kindly adhere to proper bin placement guidelines. Regards, Marlene B." Now, to be clear, our bins were out for maybe half a day longer than usual, and this wasn't even an HOA matter. We checked. Our community didn't have an active HOA. The board had dissolved years ago. So either she didn't get the memo, or she thought she was the HOA now. Eliza was stunned. "Is this real life? Who takes the time to type this?" I shrugged. "Welcome to the neighborhood, I guess." That wasn't the only note. Over the next 2 weeks, the notes multiplied. One was about moose barking during daylight hours, causing emotional distress to her indoor cat. Another expressed concern about our porch lights being too bright for a residential aesthetic. She even left one about our garden hose being too visibly coiled. I kid you not. It was like living next to a walking, talking Yelp review, except we hadn't asked for any feedback and there was no option to respond. We did our best to keep our distance, but it wasn't easy. Every time we walked outside, she was there, not talking, just watching. Sitting in a white plastic lawn chair on her porch, sunglasses on, arms folded. Moose would bark once, and she'd shake her head disapprovingly. Eliza called it the stare. I called it surveillance. Then things escalated. One Friday morning, I stepped out to fetch the mail and noticed something strange on our gravel. 4 bright orange cones, like traffic cones, had been placed neatly across the front section of our driveway. Not in a random pattern. Not in some accidental spillover from her yard. No, these were positioned intentionally like a barrier. And in between them, a wobbly white chalk line, cutting diagonally across our property, about 4 feet inward from the edge. At first, I thought maybe some local kids had been playing, but then I looked up and saw her. Karen, standing at the edge of her porch, arms crossed again, sipping from a mug. She nodded slowly at me, as if to say, I warned you. You walked over, cautiously. Morning, Marlene. I noticed these cones and the line. She didn't skip a beat. That's the actual property line. Your driveway cuts into my land. You've been trespassing since the day you moved in. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? I had this surveyed years ago. 4 feet of that gravel is mine. Do you have that survey? I'll find it, she said. In the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you parked on your own side. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even the confrontational type. But even I knew that if someone was going to accuse me of property encroachment, they better have more than a chalk line and a mug full of decaf to back it up. I went back inside, told Eliza, and we both stared at each other in disbelief. Is she serious? Eliza asked. I think she is, I said. She drew the line. That afternoon, I dug through our paperwork, deed, home inspection, and the survey provided at closing. I compared it to the county GIS maps. Every document confirmed the same thing. The driveway was completely on our property. No overlap, no gray area, no question. Still, we didn't remove the cones. Not yet. We figured maybe, just maybe, she'd cool down. That maybe this was just a weird flex, one of those battles she thought she could win with intimidation alone. We were wrong. The next day, we woke up to find another note. This time, taped to our front door. Final warning. Continued use of my property without permission constitutes trespassing and may result in legal action. I will not hesitate to tow any vehicles violating this boundary. Marlene B. Eliza looked at me like she was waiting for a punchline. She's bluffing, right? I wasn't sure, so I did what any former sailor turned remote IT guy would do. I started collecting evidence. I began taking daily photos of the driveway. Angles, timestamps, satellite maps. I pulled up Google Earth, dropped a pin exactly where she claimed her land started, and cross-referenced it with our survey. I even drew digital overlays on the GIS map, just to be sure. Every source, Google Earth, the official land records, our legal deed, confirmed the truth. We were 100% in the right. Still, that didn't stop her from escalating. Within days, she placed small metal stakes along the chalk line, each tied with red surveyor's tape, like a miniature construction zone. Moose tripped over one and yelped, which sent Eliza into a fury. That's it, she said. I'm done being polite. We decided to take it to the county. But first, I wanted one more try. One more calm, civil conversation. So I walked over with the deed in hand and knocked on her door. She opened it 2 inches. Hi, Marlene. I brought some documents I think you'll want to see. She didn't move. I continued. They show the property line. Your claim, it's not accurate. The driveway. She interrupted me. I don't care what your documents say. I know where my land ends. Marlene, these are from the county. Then take it up with the county. Click. Door closed. I stood there for a moment, wondering how someone could live so deeply in denial. How someone could be so certain, even in the face of indisputable proof, that the world bent to their truth. I walked back across the entirely mine driveway, documents in hand, and said to Eliza, it's time we take this higher. She nodded. We've tried nice. Now we try legal. It's strange how fast peace can turn into paranoia. Just a few weeks before, I was sitting on the porch sipping coffee while moose snore at my feet. Now, every time I stepped outside, I half expected to see another red tape stake poking through the gravel, or worse, Karen filming us with her phone. I started keeping our legal documents in a designated folder in the hallway. Not even tucked away, right there in plain sight. Just in case. It was clear Karen wasn't going to stop. So we did what she sarcastically suggested. We took it up with the county. I scheduled a meeting at the Charleston County Land Records office, hoping to get someone official to shut this down once and for all. I brought every piece of documentation we had. Our survey, the warranty deed, screenshots from Google Earth, and even photos of Karen's cones and chalk lines. I also printed out the text of her bizarre notes, including the one threatening to tow our vehicles. When I arrived, I met Carl. Mid-60s, khaki pants, bifocals, and the kind of face that had read too many bad property claims to be surprised by anything anymore. I laid everything on the counter, explaining what had been happening. Carl gave a low whistle. She drew a chalk line across your driveway. And put up cones, I added, then threatened to tow my wife's car. Carl gave me a long look. Well, you're doing the right thing. Paper doesn't lie. Let's pull up your plat. He tapped into the county database, and within seconds, our lot appeared on the screen. Carl layered the parcel lines over an aerial satellite image. It was clear as day. The driveway sat well within our boundary. You're clean, he said, printing off a certified land verification letter. Here's your gold. If she tries anything else, file a report, not a complaint. You've got more than enough here to protect yourself legally. That moment should have brought me peace. It should have been the turning point. But as I walked out of the county building, documents in hand, I felt more wary than relieved. Karen hadn't cared about facts so far. Why would she start now? When I got home, Eliza was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of tea. We sat in silence for a bit, just listening to the cicadas. Then she asked, "You think she's going to drop it?" I stared across the driveway, at Karen's house, her porch light flickering like a bad omen, and shook my head. No, but we're ready now. We mailed her the certified letter the next day. I printed a calm but firm note. Dear Marlene, please find enclosed official documentation from the Charleston County Land Office verifying the property boundaries. The driveway in question lies entirely within our lot, as confirmed by both the GIS system and original survey. We respectfully request that you cease all interference with our driveway and property. Daniel and Eliza. We attached a copy of the survey, the county letter, and the deed. Sent it with tracking. Signature required. It was delivered the next morning. And for a few days, it was quiet. Too quiet. The cones vanished. The red stakes disappeared. The chalk line was gone, washed away by the rain. We thought, maybe, just maybe, she'd backed off. Eliza started parking in the driveway again. Moose relaxed, but we were wrong. Karen hadn't surrendered. She was regrouping. A few days after the letter, I noticed something strange. A silver sedan had been parked across the street for hours. Same car, different times of day. A man sitting inside, sunglasses, holding a clipboard. I waved once. He didn't wave back. The next morning, he was there again. Same spot. Still watching. It went on for 3 days before I walked over and knocked on his window. He lowered it 2 inches. Morning. Everything all right? I'm conducting a visual assessment, he said flatly. Of what exactly? Client concerns regarding boundary usage. Who's your client? I'm not at liberty to say. I didn't need to guess. This was a private investigator, hired by Karen, no doubt, to dig up something, anything, that could support her fantasy. I went back inside and added the incident to my growing file. Eliza was livid. We live in a cul-de-sac, Daniel. This isn't Beverly Hills. What is she even hoping to find? I think it's not about finding anything, I said. It's about exhausting us. That night, I sat in bed with my laptop, scrolling through neighborhood forums. And that's when I found it, an old post from 2 years ago in another county, several towns over. Different street, different context, but the name? The same. Marlene B. The post described a woman who'd accused her neighbors of blocking solar access with a basketball hoop. She claimed the sun belonged to her yard. She filed multiple complaints, contacted city inspectors, and even showed up in court with hand-drawn maps that looked like they were made in MS Paint. I couldn't believe it. We weren't her first targets. We were just the latest. After that, Karen's tactics got more passive-aggressive, but creepier. She started putting small garden statues along the property edge. Not cute ones, grotesque gnomes with missing eyes, tiny angel statues with chipped wings, and one particularly disturbing lawn elf with a cracked mouth twisted into a snarl. They lined up, one by one, facing our house like some demented ceramic army. Moose refused to go near them. Eliza started avoiding the driveway again. And me? I doubled down. I installed 2 new motion-activated cameras, one at the top of the garage, one by the mailbox. I added floodlights and filed a report with the sheriff's department. Not a complaint, a report. I wasn't taking chances anymore. I also kept a log. Every incident, every strange car, every note, every stake, gnome, and verbal exchange. Date, time, details. I knew one thing from the Navy. When you're under siege, you document everything. Even silence. It wasn't just the property line anymore. It was psychological warfare. Karen wanted to make us doubt ourselves, to wear us down until we gave up. But she didn't know who she was dealing with. I've been in war zones. I've been rattled by bombs, ambushed by reality, and kept my composure through worse than chalk lines and lawn elves. This wasn't going to break me, but I wasn't fighting just for peace anymore. I was fighting for home. It was a Tuesday morning when the whole situation boiled over. Eliza had just left for work, hair still wet from the shower, travel mug of coffee in one hand, tote bag in the other. I stood at the doorway, waving like always. It was one of those oddly warm days that come out of nowhere in spring. Blue skies, a light breeze, birds already doing their morning gossip. I watched her back the car down her driveway. She smiled. It was one of those peaceful moments, the kind where you think maybe things are going to get better. Maybe even Karen had grown tired of her imaginary war. The statues were still there, of course, silently judging. But the cones had stayed gone. The chalk line had washed away for good. The guy in the silver sedan hadn't been spotted in over a week. I started to believe we'd turned a corner. I was wrong. 3 hours later, while troubleshooting a network issue for a logistics firm in Denver, my phone buzzed. It was a motion alert from the driveway cam. I clicked the notification and froze. A tow truck. It was slowly backing into our driveway. My heart pounded. I switched to the live feed. The truck was already angled in, flatbed sliding down. The driver stepped out, lean, mid-40s hoodie clipboard. He walked straight to Eliza's Honda and started examining the front tires. I bolted out the door. By the time I reached the driveway, he was attaching a tow hook. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" He looked startled, but not apologetic. "I got an order to remove this vehicle. Blocking private property." "This is private property," I said, my voice rising. "And this is my property." He looked down at the clipboard. "Dispatch said this car is encroaching. I've got a release signed by Marlene B. And I've got a deed, a county survey, and a letter from the land office, all saying this driveway belongs to me. You touch that car, and you'll be liable for theft." He hesitated. "I'm just doing my job, man." "Then I suggest you stop doing it before the sheriff gets here." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Moose, sensing my alarm, barked from inside the house with uncharacteristic intensity. The tow driver slowly backed off. "Look, man, I don't want trouble. I was told this was a private land conflict." "It's not a conflict," I said. "It's harassment." While I was still on the phone with dispatch, I saw her. Karen, standing at the edge of her porch in a beige bathrobe and slippers, holding a cup of tea like this was some early morning soap opera. Her face showed no guilt, no remorse, just irritation, as if we had inconvenienced her. The sheriff's cruiser pulled in 15 minutes later. Deputy Sanchez stepped out, a tall man with a calm but unmistakable authority about him. He was polite but firm as he listened to both sides. I handed him the folder I now referred to as my Karen kit. Karen produced nothing. No documents. No survey. No legal claim. Just her word. "This driveway cuts into my lot," she said, crossing her arms. "I had it surveyed years ago." The deputy looked at her. "Do you have a copy of that survey?" "No," she said, "but I know my boundaries." He turned to me. "Mr. Daniels, everything you've shown me confirms this driveway is yours. Certified documents, GIS overlays, and historical records. She has no standing to interfere with your property." I nodded. He turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, if you attempt to tow their vehicle again, place objects on their land, or interfere with their use of this driveway, you'll be charged with criminal trespass and civil harassment." Karen's expression didn't change, but her lip twitched ever so slightly. "I'll be contacting my attorney," she said stiffly. "You're free to do that," Deputy Sanchez replied. "But unless you come back here with a court order, you'll leave them alone." The tow truck driver, now sweating, removed the hook from Eliza's front bumper and offered a quiet apology before driving off. Karen went back inside without another word. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Eliza got home that evening to find me sitting on the porch, folder in my lap, Moose by my side. "You look like you just won a war," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I didn't win it," I replied. "I survived it." I told her everything about the tow truck, the sheriff, the final warning. Her face turned pale as I explained just how close we had come to losing her car to a false claim. "That woman is unhinged," she muttered. "Yeah, but the law's on our side, and now she knows we'll fight." That night, we poured 2 glasses of wine and clinked them together, one for victory and one for the return of sanity. But even as we celebrated, a thought lingered in the back of my mind. What kind of person goes to these lengths over a few feet of gravel? Over the next week, Karen retreated. No more notes, no cones, no mysterious visitors in parked cars. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a vacuum, like the eye of a hurricane. Then, one afternoon, I spotted something new, a tall privacy hedge being planted along the entire property line. Fast-growing evergreens, lined up like soldiers guarding her yard from ours. A wall of green to separate her world from ours. Eliza peered through the kitchen window. "Guess she's building her own Berlin Wall." "I'll take it," I said. "She can stay on her side." We laughed, but behind it was relief. The battle was over, not because we defeated her, but because we'd refused to back down. She tried everything: lies, intimidation, passive-aggressive nonsense, even dragging a tow truck into it. And none of it worked. Because we had facts. Because we had each other. And because we didn't let her gaslight us into surrender. We took back our driveway, our peace, and our dignity. And then, just for ourselves, we planted something too. Near the edge of our driveway, right at the very spot Karen once claimed as hers. We dug a small hole and planted a young oak sapling. We named it Boundary. Every day, Moose walks past it proudly. Every week, we measure its growth. It's already a foot taller than when we planted it. Eliza says that tree's going to outlive all of us. And I say good, because long after the Karen of our lives is gone, long after the memories fade and the driveway grows old, Boundary will remain. Standing tall, unbothered, and firmly on our side. It's funny how something as simple as a driveway, a few dozen feet of gravel and dirt, can become the battleground for something so much bigger. Bigger than property lines. Bigger than bad neighbors. Bigger, even, than the absurdity of being threatened with a tow truck on your own land. Because once the dust settles and the sheriff's cruiser pulls away and the gnomes stop watching you with their hollow eyes, you're left with something far more difficult to navigate than angry neighbors. You're left with your own thoughts. For weeks afterward, Eliza and I lived in a strange kind of silence. Not fear, no. We weren't scared anymore. We had one. But the experience had settled into our minds like a heavy fog. The kind that doesn't block your vision, but blurs the edges of everything. One evening, Eliza sat beside me on the porch and said, "I hate how much space she took up in my head." I knew what she meant. Even though the war was over, we found ourselves watching the window every time we heard a car door slam. We triple-checked the driveway cameras. I kept the folder labeled Karen in a fireproof safe, just in case. We weren't paranoid. We were prepared. But even preparation has a weight to it. A tension, a subtle hum that never goes quiet. We had to relearn peace. Strangely, it wasn't until the oak tree, our boundary, started sprouting its first new branch that I realized we were healing. Moose liked to lie in its shadow during the afternoons, especially when the sun hit it just right. He'd do this lazy roll onto his back and sigh, like the yard finally belonged to him again. And maybe it did. The evergreens Karen planted had grown thick by then. We couldn't see her house anymore. That was the point, I guess. She didn't want to see us, and frankly, we felt the same. But we didn't hate her. That's the strange part. We pitied her. Because anyone who builds walls that tall around their life is trying desperately to keep something out or keep something buried inside. I've thought a lot about why she acted the way she did. Was it ego? Control? Boredom? Loneliness? Maybe it was all of that. Or maybe she just spent too long believing that being right was more important than being decent. That boundaries were something to fight over, not respect. And that's the real danger of people like Karen. It's not just the gnomes and the chalk and the notes. It's the way they convince themselves that the world owes them submission. That truth is whatever they decide it is. And when they're met with resistance, facts, maps, law, they double down instead of stepping back. But here's what she underestimated. She thought we were the kind of people who would cave, who'd move the car, ignore the notes, let her redefine the rules just to keep the peace. She didn't realize we were the kind of people who had earned our peace, who had scraped and saved and sweated for this home, who had served our country, built our life, and fought for every inch of ground we stood on, not with fists, but with patience and principle. Looking back, the story might seem ridiculous. I mean, try explaining it to someone over dinner. Yeah, our neighbor tried to tow our car because she claimed 4 feet of our driveway. We had to bring in the sheriff, and they laugh because it sounds like satire, like a comedy skit from a suburban TV show. But we lived it, and when you're living it, it doesn't feel funny. It feels like being gaslit by someone who refuses to believe the sky is blue. It feels like being in a constant state of low-level alert, scanning for the next move, waiting for the next line to be crossed. It feels like invasion, not by troops, but by tension, the slow drip of stress that leaks into every other part of your life. That's the part people don't always understand about neighbor disputes. They don't stay in the yard. They follow you into your kitchen, into your sleep, into your conversations with your spouse. They become part of your morning routine, your body language, your relationship with your own front door. But here's what we learned, what I want you to take away from this if you're going through something similar. First, document everything. Don't wait until the problem escalates. Every note, every object placed on your land, every weird encounter, photograph it, date it, store it. These things matter when it's time to involve the law. Emotion won't win the case. Paper trails will. Second, know your rights. Pull up your property survey. Go to your county GIS office. Print out maps. Get the deed. Don't rely on hearsay or even what your realtor told you. Know the boundaries better than your neighbor does. You can't defend your castle if you don't know where your moat begins. Third, don't engage in emotional warfare. It's tempting. Oh, it's so tempting. But people like Karen feed on reaction. That's their currency. Deny them the satisfaction. Stay calm. Stay measured. Let the facts do the fighting. Fourth, don't isolate. Talk to your partner, your friends, your sheriff's department, if needed. There's no shame in seeking help. These situations can wear down even the strongest person. Community isn't just a street name, it's support. And finally, protect your peace like it's property, because it is. And once you lose it, it's hard to get back. A few weeks ago, I ran into Jerry, the old guy who walks every morning in his fishing hat. He heard about the incident from another neighbor down the road. "Y'all had a rough one," he said with a grin. "Yeah," I replied. "But we made it." He nodded. "You know what they say? Every neighborhood's got one." I laughed. And apparently, we got the deluxe model. We stood there in a morning light, sipping coffee, watching the breeze ripple through the evergreens. He glanced toward the tall tree at the edge of my driveway, the one we named Boundary. "Good name for it," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "We thought so." That's the thing about boundaries, real ones and emotional ones. They're not just there to keep people out. They're there to remind you who you are, what you value, what you've earned, and what you will never again let someone take from you. So if you're going through something similar, if your Karen has drawn a line in the dirt and dared you to cross it, don't panic. Don't fold. Don't meet madness with madness. Stand your ground. Gather your truth. Plant your tree. And when the time comes, let it grow. At last, subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon for more interesting stories.